Hello traders, it's Francesco here. Again, I just made a video on Turkish lira, and this is my, as I mentioned in the comments to that video, this is actually my other trade that I've got on, is USD MXN, which is the Mexican peso, US dollar Mexican peso. And I've actually gone long. I've gone long around, I think about here. Essentially, I've gone long because I have kind of looked at the monthly and I see this kind of huge pattern. Now, I used to look at the USD Mexican peso quite a while ago, and I was kind of into that because I was looking for like a carry trade. That's how I got to kind of trade the Turkish lira, trying to sell that currency pair. And I was doing this as well, trying to sell US dollar. But you can see that actually it's kind of been on an uptrend overall. We had this sort of period here last year. Now, this huge move here just preceded the COVID crisis, and then we've had this huge sell-off. This sell-off, this is where I'm long because we've actually testing, as you can see, we're just almost down to this line. Now, this line is something I put in a few days ago, and we're just coming right up to it. I didn't think we'd come right up to it, actually. Originally, I had this line set to, I had this line chart on the monthly because it's quite clear to see rather than the candles. And I had it set to this bump here in November of 2018. We've actually gone below that. But before we came below that, I was kind of wondering whether that was a bit maybe not representative of a support line or form of resistance. So I thought this was better because we essentially have two tests of this. I know it could be a zone, but on a monthly, a zone is huge. So just to be a little bit more precise, it's kind of like on these two, so roughly there. Okay, I'll put it on the second one, but it's quite close to the first one. So these two kind of tests of resistance in kind of May 2018 and August 2019. So kind of like almost the summer of 1 year and then the next. And we have this kind of hump in the middle. Also rising trend line here. And so essentially we come into this area, which I would consider a support area. You might say, well, could it not fall any further? Yes, but the sort of overall it's an uptrend. And so we could say that, you know, we've tested this high. I could actually go further. I could do it live. I could do that now. If we just give me a second, I'm going to show you what I mean. If I did a parallel channel and actually drew that sort of here. Now, this is just kind of technical analysis gone bonkers because obviously this has no meaning in terms of where it might go next. These are just kind of lines on a chart. It doesn't really mean anything, but just kind of visualize that. So if you look at that in this way, in that angle, you can see that we have these tests. This is kind of middle line. We can call it mean reversion line or whatever you want. But essentially, we kind of chopped around that for a while, and then we've sort of gone below that again. So the last time we significantly went below that, but it's before it was confirmed as a channel, was down here, and we went all the way. It was just short, it's a short fall there, as they call it, where we didn't quite test the bottom, but that channel hadn't formed yet, so it doesn't really count. Here we've sort of gone backwards and forwards on that, and then we went all the way up, and so kind of testing this channel. Now I just drew those lines now, and in hindsight it's quite easy. If you were sort of trading that here, how were you to know that this was going to drop like a stone and then sort of sit around the middle there? Obviously on a monthly they're quite big ranges, but even so, in it, if you look at kind of trend, you can see that it was a bit of a stall in there. But you can still trade that. It's quite a lot of pips really. Although value per pip is not as big as your essentially your USD, for example. Now the interesting thing is that we've had this sell-off. We come down to this line. Now you might say, well, this line didn't really apply. We're looking more at the channel here. What's going on? Well, the channel is fine, but also we need to look at this this line because I think we have this form of resistance now could be support. We don't have to go all the way back here, as you can see here on the mean reversion. We could possibly just go back. So I think this could be possibly another leg up. So my contention is that basically, I know that USD is quite an oversold currency, keeps being sold, but I think probably it could be the end of the line for that. And I'll sort of come to that in a second by actually going back to the daily chart because that kind of makes it a bit easier. So there's a daily chart, and we sort of crossed below the 100-day moving average, and we sort of bounced against it, and we're below it, and we're testing this. As I said, it's kind of line support possibly, And then we kind of say, well, okay, how about we put in an indicator there, as I've done on the other one, and say we'll call it an RSI, and they'll be happy with that. So we put an RSI there. And with the RSI, I usually, as I said before, set it to 80-20 because I think it's kind of more realistic than a 70. Not realistic, but it's kind of a filter. I prefer it that way. I think it's better to have a filter around those levels. So once you set it to 80-20, you can kind of look at that again and say, well, what's happening in terms of the oscillator there? Is it overbought, oversold? What's going on? There's a daily there. So essentially, we were overbought there in 97, basically, up here during the COVID crisis, and then we kind of slumped right down, and now we sort of hit these 20s, kind of low 30s, and we're back down to this kind of like 35 something. So we're definitely below the middle line. And the other thing you can notice there um, is the divergence. So we've got price coming right down to the support, but actually if you look at these lows, you can kind of notice that we've got actual you see that it's flat, almost sort of tilted to an up, and that basically is divergence from there. So on that, we have made new lows on the RSI, and that's basically a sign to me that this kind of selling off is potentially over. But obviously, you always have to check how this particular pair responded to those situations. If you look at the RSI in a kind of wider context of a larger time frame, those are the little lines I made there earlier, so I'll get rid of them. You can see that essentially, again, we are severely overbought, over 80, down here to, up here, sorry, to about 87 almost. And now we're down here to the 38. So again, below the 50, below the middle line. And of course, we crossed the 100 weeks moving average there, which is kind of a sign. We've crossed it before here, interestingly, and that's kind of a smoothing line, but we crossed it before then. What was happening was that price and RSI were kind of converging. So in that case, it sort of held true, and it sort of went that way. In this case, you can see that this low and this are about the same. I'm not really sure what that's telling us. Really, it's not as clear as the daily in terms of divergence. Not much at all. On the monthly, going back to the monthly that we were looking at earlier, we can see that price has gone up, but there's actually a clear divergence. I'm going to draw a line. Just the line is really clear if you kind of do that visually. You don't have to go back as far as that, but if I just do that, and then maybe just really from there is enough. So from October 16 to this, which is April 20, so about 4-year kind of divergence, and price has gone right up. So again, it's hindsight is a beautiful thing, isn't it? So, but essentially we're kind of like almost flat here in terms of the lows of the RSI and kind of the below 50. And again, we're 47.77 at the moment, so below 50. So it's kind of like an equilibrium. It could go higher again or not. But I think it's kind of held there for quite some time. In fact, we've got the divergence point. Let me just put it to here. That's kind of like there, and then move it up to 50. And that's basically 50 there. I'm trying to be as precise as possible. So the fact that we're 50. A lot of the time here, all this July to, July to, or place like May of 17, May 18, and all the way up to November 19. So it's like a year and a half. We've been sitting there sort of around the middle point of the RSI range, the 50. And we shot up and we back to it. So I think although there's sort of divergence there, telling us that price is going up, but RSI is not agreeing with that. Currently, I think there's more room to, again, go further up. So there's the kind of overall larger divergence that we've noticed on the daily there, but also actually the fact that we've done the sell-off, and on the daily you can see we've gone right below it. So I think we're probably ready for some kind of some kind of appreciation again of USD versus MXN. The justification of the fundamental point, the Banxico, so the Mexican central bank, have actually upheld their rates, and essentially they're sort of looking at stemming the kind of flow of rate cuts that they've had. But actually that doesn't really tell us going forward what they're planning to do. So I don't know how much of this is to do with that, or just general kind of dollar weakness across the board. And the other thing I looked at is the iShares MSCI Mexico ETF. That's kind of like the Turkish one that I showed you before. It's basically an index which encapsulates those kind of strongest companies in Mexico, and that gives you a kind of sentiment measure. And again, is sort of inverted to correlated to the USD MXN. So you can see the peso is going up because the iShares index is also going up. So lots of buying in straight days. Basically, we've got kind of like 2 weeks, 2 working weeks or 2 trading weeks of buying, with a slight exception there on the 12th, which was last Thursday, when we had a dip there. So volume has been quite responsive to buying. Now we've got this sort of curving off there, just flattening out, just a stemming of this kind of rise, which we did before as well. So we don't really know if that's the end of that. But this kind of from today is starting to form a little selling point there. So again, we've struggled up through this difficult time and got to this point. Again, we've hit this point before, and that was basically support. It could be resistance now, so the inverse of what I was showing you on the currency pair side. So, and then if we go into the hourly, you can see that we've had a bit of that going on. Lots of buying today, and really just not really much going on, and actually quite flat. So on an hourly basis today, intraday, it's actually been quite a flat picture, and it doesn't really give us confidence that the peso is going to be boosted much longer. So that's basically my video for today, which is looking at this very interesting currency pair after this sort of huge move. And one other thing I like to sort of bring to your attention, perhaps, I always have this thing where I'm about to finish and then something else comes to mind, would be something like a Fibonacci, right? Because it would be a really, really good tool in this case. Looking at this, essentially we've got a full retracement almost of this move from the bottom to the top, but not quite right to the bottom. But just kind of putting that on the screen would really give you a sense of what the Fibonacci would give us. Let's do a retracement. That's quite simple to do. We do that retracement of the whole move. Obviously, nobody knew that that move was going to happen, so it's quite easy in retrospect to kind of do this. But just kind of get a sense of where we are in that context. So if we have this as our move, so let's have a look at that for a second. Essentially, we've now got this, and the we got to, well, where are we? Yeah, that's basically, yeah, 61.78. So it's the 0.78 mark, kind of right there under that line that I drew. I didn't know that. It's just, it just so happens that that's the case. But it's kind of these lines that sometimes a bit random with the Fibonacci that don't really necessarily tell us something. Obviously, if you put candles on that, it might be better because you get the wicks, so that kind of makes sense. Sometimes you get these sort of huge wicks that kind of tell us. See that long wick there, and then retrace all the way down under the 100-day moving average, and then under the Fibonacci retracement. So in that case, maybe it sort of says the 61 there. That's an important level. And so, if it wants to retrace all the way like 100%, fine. But we're on the 78 really, and then we go into sort of negative. So I think it's probably overdone, possibly. I'm thinking, but that's kind of where I'm at with that. So anyway, wish you luck if you're trading this. It's quite an interesting pair. Obviously, if you're selling the USD MXN, you get quite a nice carry. You know, if you've been holding that short for all this time, we'd have got quite a nice bit of nice bit of carry of carry of rollover. So basically, that's what we need to do. But I wouldn't really bank on it necessarily because it's probably quite a late point to get into that move. But anyway, hopefully that'll be a good trade for me, and we'll see how it goes. So best of luck, and I'll see you in my next video. Take care. Thanks for watching again. Appreciate it. Bye.